don't know if I really need this. No. We'll see later. It's quite interesting actually when we sort of someone came and said, I think we're going to start because the latrines are playing up. I thought, no, that can't be right. Latrines. Then I realised it was the trains and the trams, so that's right. So giving talks on innovation, I think people tend to expect that you should levitate in or sort of fly in through the windows. And it's, I think people tend to have this feeling that it's all about sort of the tech startups, it's all about the sort of the new sort of apps, the new internet, expressions of new ways of doing things, and it is to a certain extent. But I think what I wanted to talk about today and take this opportunity is to talk about businesses that are established, that know their markets, that know their customers, and how you can then look to be open to innovation, to actually look to expand your business, change your business, maybe change the business model, build on what you're doing, but use the fact you have that knowledge and that expertise and that place in the market as a great way of launching innovations and of changing your business. So I'm one of these people that has a great job. I can make you all jealous because every week at least once or twice there is just a name in my diary which I have no idea what it is. It's just somebody coming to tell me an idea. Sometimes they're complete and utter nutters. And I may cover some of those later. But it's exciting because you just don't know what's going to come in or what isn't. For example, I had a student come in who said, I've got this brilliant idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a double-decker bus and I'm going to put a recording studio in the top of the double-decker bus and the mixing studio in the bottom of the double-decker bus, and I'm going to drive all around the country, around to different universities, link up with university bands, record their albums, and then make a percentage of selling their albums. Great. Two problems. One, the name. He called his business Methylated Melodies, which I think is about the worst name I've ever heard for one of my businesses. Second, he started this business, got it all set up, printed everything out, and then said, how do I find out how much a double-decker bus costs? Then he found out, and that was the end of Methylated Melodies. It lasted 3 weeks. So, not every idea is a good idea. And I think one of the fascinating things that I have is that as well as working with startups, working with established businesses, working with students, we also work with academic research coming out of the University of Sussex. So we see some fascinating things from there. And part of our job from that side is to look for applications of ideas. And so somebody came in to our office today and said, right, what we've got is we've got this ability to create a smelly bubble with text projected on it. And you go, okay. He says, we've got a name, it's called Sensor Bubble. You go, okay. And amazingly, we've got it being launched with Avon to actually, because they can't advertise new scents for some reason in billboard advertising in Brazil. And so they're using this to actually fill it with the scent of different new fragrances that are coming out and going to be launching it in major cities by just floating these smelly bubbles, which will then burst and everyone gets a smell. But somehow, someone has to come up with that idea. So what we get, in that sense, is the classic, what people call a sort of technology push, is people have ideas, and our job is to try and find, well, what could you do with that? So another one which is being exciting at the moment is we had a company or an academic that's developing something called Electro sensors, which is a way of sort of measuring your electric field, in a sense, a very simple way. It's a perfect capacitor if you're more technical in that sense. And what you're doing with that is that you can take various measurements from the body by picking up different electrical responses. The classic one is the ECG, or EKG, depending where you are. In terms of, so what you can do is you can sew this sensor into batteries to the hospital bed, and as soon as you lie someone down the bed, there's all sorts of technical things that become slightly more complicated, but it can take your ECG for you. And so rather than having sort of 12 leads connected up to your full ECG, there are ways of doing it within a static situation. So there's whole work going on in terms of the moment doing trials with NHS in terms of how can we use this ECG in different ways. But actually, if you put it on your muscles, you get EMG and look at muscular responses. You put it in your head, you can be measuring your on that side, you can do your optic nerves, your EOG, so anything with E and G at the end of it, you can put a letter in the middle and find something to measure and do something with. So one of the things, for example, so we put out this sort of a lot of PR a couple of years ago, where we say if you could measure your ECG at sort of 3 feet away, how could you use it? And people just came up with sort of different ideas, different responses of actually how that could be used, how it could be made to work. We're looking at sort of security applications that if you can measure someone's heartbeat through a wall, and if you can tell the difference whether it's a human or a goat, how could you use that? Actually, military are very interested in that type of thing. But it gets even more interesting in the sense that people said, well, actually, if you look at how people fall asleep at the wheel, one of the things you look at is eyelid fluttering and that type of things, that building systems which have cameras looking at the way in which people react at the wheel. Actually, if you wait for the eyelids to flutter, it's too late. You're probably already falling asleep. But you will get a change in your heart rate. So it's a way of saying, actually, how can we incorporate these ECGs to measure your heart rate and your sort of the characteristics of your heart rate while you're driving, and to predict when you're just falling asleep, just that moment where you're just going, and then shoot 30,000 volts up your arse. Just to wake you up and keep you going, keep you moving. And so it's the whole thing of having developed a technology, and one last one, is the fact that when you put your hand down on there, you leave a very slight electrical charge. And that electrical charge will decay at a very predictable rate. So having done that, I've left my fingerprints, and I've left this decaying electrical charge. What you can do is, in measuring that electrical charge, is you can tell when that fingerprint was laid. Was it before or after the murder? Dun, dun, dun. So that's the whole way in which you can change CSI, change the way things that work. But you see, it's a technology push. It's someone's come up with a new way of doing stuff, and then from that, how could you use it? How can you make something happen? So that's part of what we do. The Innovation Centre is look for applications, look for customers, look for markets, and how you take it on into those ways. If anybody wants a smelly bubble, we have them. We can work on that side. And so, to a large extent, one of the reasons why we wanted to hold this event was to say, in a situation that, yes, people start startups and start a new business around that, and often it's technologists that will create that business and start taking it forward. But what you have to work with them on is how to build that market knowledge, how to understand the way the customers work, how to understand how you can have a business model that works on that side. Whereas most of you guys here, we know your markets, we know your businesses. How do you find innovations, or how do you take the ideas that within your business, or come out of your business, and how that can be utilised and taken forward on that open side? So it's all about actually having to create those different ways in which the market works. And so it's not just about gadgets, it's not just about sort of apps. So apps is a great way of actually building a whole new way in which you can create that customer interaction, create ways in which work. You'll be looking at sort of some examples today which that type of technology helps to make a different business model work within that way. So one of the businesses that we wanted to pick on, sort of some of the businesses we're doing here. So the Innovation Centre, so our main centre is down just outside Brighton, University of Sussex. This is the first of our satellite centres where we're bringing the expertise and the knowledge out to Croydon, because it's absolutely bursting with innovation and such a sort of energy and enthusiasm at the moment in terms of building new businesses, building new types of a whole new economy here. And so we now are bringing in about 100 businesses into the Innovation Centre, whether they're physically here, whether they're networked or virtually here, to help them establish their businesses and take their innovations forward. So all the companies we're showing have a base here. So one of the examples is a company called Crystal Illusion, which is just around the corner there. And what they've done is they've developed a special type of coating, which is hydrophobic, and which can be a sort of nanomaterial. It's sort of abrasion resistant. So what you can do with it is you can coat a mobile phone in it and make it waterproof in that sense. So what they're doing is developing a whole new business around that. But the whole point of it is that, yes, that works with mobile phones. How else could you use it? How else would that work? Who else could use that type of technology to make it work on that side? And how would that actually drive the business forward? So it's all about how those things happen, and that type of business is starting and building from within Croydon. And so a lot of what we do for business like that is then trying to understand where the markets might work. So for example, a company I worked with a few years ago, a company called Animazoo, and they worked on the technology of doing on-body motion capture. So if you remember Gollum in Lord of the Rings, the technology was used in some of the creation of that. So rather than just working in light studios, people are wearing a sort of a bodysuit which has all sorts of sensors on it, and it will measure all the movements. And so what it means is that rather than being in a light studio where you can have one actor with all the targets on their body and you're picking that up through the various special camera systems, you can have multiple actors interacting, working on that side of things. So they said, well, there's a huge market for animation, for games technology, for doing all sorts of new types of animated films. So there must be billions of dollars being spent on that. So they developed this technology, and then they suddenly realised, well, there may be billions spent on producing it, but people only spend tens of millions in terms of technology to do it, or to use it. So they realised that whole sort of market had fallen apart in terms of how they were going to actually use this technology. And then one of the things that they found was that they were totally focused on the entertainment industry, had salespeople from the industry, set up a sort of office in LA, that type of thing. And then they realised that actually other people were buying their technology, and they had no idea what people were doing with it. And so, for example, they realised that Suzuki were buying their technology as being the only way in which people could measure how people moved on a motorbike at 100 miles an hour. So how could they actually measure the movements of that? Obviously can't do it in a studio. This was the only way they could do moving it. British Airways started using it to look at how people slept on first-class beds and how they could change the way in which they configured that. They realised that Toyota were using it to look at the industrial ergonomics of how people work on a production line and how that would change. And so what it was is each of those markets in itself was bigger than the animation market. And so they created another sort of 3 or 4 businesses and actually sold the business in different ways and licensed the technology out in different ways to make that work. It was them trying to understand how the technology could be used, which was different from how they'd first envisaged it. But also was that in doing that and in changing their focus into those other markets, they realised they had the wrong salespeople, the wrong approach, the wrong branding, the wrong sort of all the things that were wrong, because how they would sell to a studio in LA doing games technology and how they would sell to Toyota's manufacturing director was entirely different. And so that's part of the process, is actually helping people establish how to sell the business, how to sell the technology, and how to make it work on that side. And that's what we're going to be sort of talking about in a sense, is to use a couple of examples from companies that are working within Croydon and taking those, I mean, their businesses are working all over the world, also all over the UK at the moment, and how they have adapted technology to make it fit a particular application in the marketplace, and then building on that application. And hopefully what will come across from those case studies is the fact it's far more about understanding the way people work and the way in which they can apply the technology to make their business better, work more effectively, which is why their success of their business is going to be significant. So I'd like to introduce the first though, so Ian. There he is. Hi there.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with just a demo. This is an app, by the way, so I'm start with a demo of what the app is, and then I'm going to just give you a bit of a history of how that evolved, where it came from originally, and where we're going to go forward with it, and how our use of the business has changed a little bit. So this app, Love Clean Streets, is for the public, and it's about reporting environmental issues. So if you're walking to school, your child to school, or you're walking to work, or you see some graffiti or flight it, what you can do is use the app to make a report about it. We'll capture the location, capture images, and we'll send it to the authorities who are responsible for dealing with that, and we'll plug it into their back office system so that the job gets done. So here's very simple to use. Here's the app. You can normally use it on a phone. You can use it on iPad. Hit begin. You get the location automatically. You can change it if you want. You can then take one or more photos. You could do video if you wanted to. You categorize it. What we're trying to do here is just capture enough information, if you like, that makes it easy for the authorities, whoever's going to receive this report, to deal with it in the most efficient way. But we don't want to make you fill in a big form, so you get halfway through. This is something we want you to go use it. It takes seconds to make a report, and then sort of just get on with your life. So it's not really about everybody who's. Often people talk about the environment. We're passionate about the environment. We want people to be passionate about the environment. I also want to appeal to people who just aren't passionate about the environment, just a bit annoyed that some dog pooed by the school game. So anyway, there it is, ready to send, and I can send that now, save it to my phone, and save it later on. So very easy, very simple to use. Keeps you informed. You'll get a message back saying thanks for your report. They will tell you when the job's been done, or if there's any issues that they might need to discuss with you. So we've just done our 1 millionth report through that service across the UK this year. And in fact, if you look at the ramp up for this year, so that's 1 million since we started that sort of service in 2010, 2011. But this year alone, we're on target to do 500,000 just for this year. So you can see we're really increasing the amount of usage of the app. And where did it come from initially? I mean, initially that was actually quite a few years ago. I did the first version of this for London Authority, which was just meant for internal use. And so what happened was operatives would be taking before and after images of stuff that they're doing to clean the streets. And that was then put onto a website, and that was a political message to say, look how much work we're doing. This is where your council tax is going, and this is how much effort needs to go into to keep your streets clean. And when I took that idea and took it to authorities at that point, and said, 2005, 2006, got this great service you could offer to your citizens, it was much, the message was, well, that's quite interesting, but, and bear in mind, this is before iPhone, this is before, Flickr, before photo sharing to the websites, before Facebook really, and all that sort of stuff took off. This was a Windows mobile app. So they said, why don't we do that? People can call. They can call us. Why do you need to do that? And it took a long time before people firstly said, well, hang on, this is the way people need different channels to be able to communicate with us. And secondly, calling is actually a pretty expensive way of dealing with that issue. People will exaggerate. You won't get the data that you want if you want to automate it. You won't. So people will phone up to there's a fly tip on my corner of my road. It's massive. It's been there months. It's a mattress that could have been picked up on a cage lorry on that day. So you can save money in terms of the way that you deal with those, like having the information and plug into the right systems. So any month we have over 200 authorities that are receiving reports and processing them. Our business model is based, and this is all free for the consumers to use, and we have a freemium model. So of those 200 authorities, 50 of them are plugged in with full back office integration, so they get the full benefits in the business case based on them saving money in the way they process those reports. So it's freemium, it's software as a service. We sell it on a yearly subscription basis, which also has been interesting for local authorities initially in terms of how they receive that. And we've done a lot of work. I mean, the app really is just a small part. So initially the app is the headline, and it's a thing that grabs people's attention. But the real benefit is the back office, it's the cloud service, and it's the work we've done building relationships with third-party suppliers like Veolia and CETA, or IT suppliers like Microsoft, or Bitty Bose, so that we can automate this stuff into the back office as the stuff comes through. So when you make a report about some roadworks, you go straight into Veolia, and the guys get notification within their system to go and add it to their route, and then they do the work. Market is complete. It comes back to the citizen. And so that's an interesting, been an interesting business so far. That's UK focused mostly. As I say, around 50 authorities that are signing up. But what we started to realise was this technology can be used as a platform for other things too. So there's some obvious things that we've been into, which is housing. So housing is a much bigger market. 1,500 odd housing associations we think that are the size and scope that we can target for the same sort of service. So a housing association might not want to just do environmental reports, they want to maybe enable that for internal repairs or communal repairs, broken lift, and also for their estate officers to be more accurately report that information. And as we've had our apps out in the marketplace, we get other companies coming to us and saying, this is interesting technology, can we use it in different ways? So waste contract companies or sort of park maintenance have looked at it and said, well, could our guys use this and use it as a way of validating the work that we're contracted to do for our local authority? So basically produce a report that says, here's the before and after images of all of the stuff that we've done to meet our contractual obligations, rather than the authority having to send somebody out to check they've done what they're supposed to be doing, which seems to be a crazy way of wasting money. So we started to move into that sort of area. Had asset management companies, and this is a huge area with a completely different pricing model that we can start to think about. We're taking that same platform technology, and moving it forward. So the moment we get location, you think of what's the next step of accurate capture of a location, and particularly for fixed assets. So for example, if somebody was maintaining this building, and they've got to make sure that the TVs and the CCTV or the locks, the doors and everything else is functional, and perhaps we could tag these things up with Bluetooth beacons or RFID tags in the app, and we bring it close to it, or text that, not using location services anymore, we're just identifying that fixed asset, and then they can produce their report or their monitoring based on that. Or if you want to train, it's a broken toilet, location services aren't any good because the train's moving. If you go into that Virgin train and there's the toilet, and as soon as it's broken, you've got to report it, use the app, and it says, is this the thing? So it's sort of identifying that. So that's the areas we're sort of taking that same technology, that same platform. It's a platform that we've built, if you like, from what was initially reasonably small market, 400 authorities, to housing, to asset management, and to other areas. And that's the sort of thing I think that's interesting. I was actually just thinking, as we were talking to Mike earlier, I think those initial discussions we had, that's where these thoughts initially came from, and I think the market might push us out. That sort of thinking, hang on, it's not just this technology just used for local authorities, there's a whole bigger opportunity elsewhere. And of course, our opportunity is also not limited in the UK, so we're also looking elsewhere to scale very easily. And each of those represents actually a much bigger business opportunity than what we've got now. And we're currently at a stage where we're looking to expand to really fulfill those opportunities.
Good, thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
I think the key words that come from that is not photographs or apps, it's back office, it's understanding money saving, it's understanding how local authorities will interact with both their political audience in terms of how they prove that they're doing a good job, but also how they interact with their contractors to be able to manage them in a more effective way. And all those things are about the business element of it, not about the technology. I think that's why I've sort of used that as a good example as to how, especially these days, everyone can take a photograph. When we started this, it was relatively new on that side, but even within that context, everyone has a sort of a camera on their phone, but actually it's all about how do you use that data and how you sell it to the people that are your potential customers on the basis of how it will make their lives easier. And that's that market knowledge which is absolutely key. Another company in the centre here is a company called Audio Agents. And it was an interesting meeting them because it's another sort of photography-based company. And I can't think of how many businesses I've seen over the years that have said, what we've got is a brand new way of doing photography for estate agents. You go, whoopee! And whether it's sort of ways of doing fisheye photography or three-dimensional tours or video tours, all these sort of things. And I'd seen loads of companies set up and fail. Because what they were trying to do, which seemed very sensible at the time, was try and sell a technology, sell a service to estate agents for them to buy so they could get their additional value from their business. And generally, it just didn't work. And then audio agents came along, and what they did was, through a very good contact that they had within one of the largest estate agents in the country, was they set it up as a service that the estate agents sold to their vendors. Just a very simple shift in the business model. But instead of it being a cost to the estate agents, and how could they justify that within the percentage that they charged or the fixed fee that they charged the people selling their houses, if you're selling your house for a good few £100,000 and someone said, would you pay an extra £100 to have a really good set of photographs that will also do all the room layouts and measurements and that sort of thing? Would you pay an extra £100 for that if I could also show that it increases your chance of getting your asking price by 10%? Who's going to say no? So what it became was a product that the estate agents could sell to their clients. They had a new revenue stream. They had a 50% take-up of vendors buying the service. And so that company has gone from scratch to, I think, 2 million last year, and will look to rise and double each year from that. So again, the technology, in fact, wasn't that new in that sense. Actually, the way in which you upload it, send the data across, the way you do your route layouts, there is a lot of technology involved with that. So it's a simple change in the business model which provided something of value both to the vendors and the estate agents, and the company can make a lot of money out of it. So again, it's that simple thing around the business model on that side. So these things are so often around sort of that market pull. And actually, how do you build businesses from that? So one of the things that we get very involved with is people assume, in many cases, that we work with technology startups or technology businesses from that side. And actually, so many of the successful businesses that we've had have come from the industries that they are looking to serve. So, for example, we've probably done 15 successful education technology startups, of which at least 12 of them were started by teachers. And so part of the way in which we've set up the Innovation Centre is to serve a market where a teacher is coming to you, say, I've got this idea that I think would really help things in the classroom. But I know nothing about running a business, I haven't got a management team, I haven't got any money, all these sort of things, and building the infrastructure and the business elements around that idea. So that's what we do. Within the Innovation Centre, we're not technologists per se, I am, but that's irrelevant in that sense. It is all people that work within the market side, the sales side, the finance side, the operations side of how to run businesses and how to fill gaps where someone comes in with an idea to help make that idea happen. Second case study I wanted to sort of put in is with James here. And it's a new company called Lavima, which comes from trying to solve a problem within a academic research environment, which is actually all about expenses and that sort of thing, and the way in which a new technology and new businesses come out of that. James.
Hey everyone.
Microphone if you'd like.
Oh, I'll try and bellow. So I'm James. I have two hats I wear. One, I run an R&D company for 10 years. Started out of Edinburgh, won 4 national awards in design, and the second hat is I'm now head of product at Lavima. So this is my first spin out from my spin out from university. Technically. And I'm very privileged that I get to play with toys every day, basically. Or what I mean by that is very expensive products that I try and make and flog to anybody I can find. Now, just very quick hands up. What industries have we got represented here? Saffron did a brief spec, but if you're in construction, can you put your hands up very briefly for me? So we've got construction over there, HR, some HR, advertising, so council, banks, and the centre here, what do you guys do, very briefly? Care. Right. So, the story of Lavima comes from a small project in my 3rd year of running my company that was only meant to give you a couple of grand a month. So I don't know if anybody's run a consultancy, the scariest thing is the end of the month. And if your time and labour, if I could find one thing that would just take the edge off the consultancy, I could sleep better at night, because it's quite painful having a 20 grand a month wage bill and nowhere to get retained income. That was my biggest fear. The product sucked. We built something for HR. I don't know if you know the Corporate Manslaughter Act, that wonderful piece of legislation in 2012. Basically, if you're off-site, you need to know where they are, and people would fill in the form, and then they would ask for money. So no one wanted to use it, and they wanted to fill in the form and ask for money. So wouldn't it be great if you could give everyone money? And we started looking down that. One of the biggest problems, especially for my generation, is empowering your staff to do the job that you need when you need it. And if you look at your corporate identity, there are three things that really happen. You all are here because you sacrifice some of your time for this thing called a wage. And you say, here's a deal, I'll work for you 8 hours and I'm worth this, and they give you money. The other thing we have is that we have space. Your corporate identity gives you space. A place to work, whether machinery or whatever else. But the last thing that we haven't really tried to change is the petty cash issue. I want you to do something, can you go and do it for me? And that's not really expenses, that is empowering people the ability to spend money responsibly. And there's this thing called the credit card. And for many years, the flash gits would sit there in central London and say, have you looked at my nice like little Amex card? It's wonderful. Let's buy everyone drinks. As a small business owner, I didn't want that. What I did want is I wanted my junior staff to be able to buy a laptop of £1,500 and not bother me. I didn't want to lose the contract I had on near Christmas when I was sitting somewhere going 50 grand, but my staff's biggest need was me to pay for the Christmas party. So I actually did get dragged out and scuffed my neck, brought down and lost that contract, unfortunately. I want to know at the end of the year what the £475 spent by my staff is on a one-liner on the transaction. I'm not claiming fraud, but I really would like to send Tom for 2 days to go and find that receipt and know it was him. Because it was there, I know the transaction is, my accountant's shouting at me, and who spent that money? So what did we do? So I looked at it. It doesn't work with 1 or 2 cards. You sort of need to give everyone a card in the company, don't you? It's your identity. So what happens if you give everyone a prepaid card? That's interesting. But you have to load it. So what we did is, formally, we integrated an app with a prepaid card system, so you can upload from budgets. People can request money and get money, or you can give money, take the picture of the receipt, job done. That's it, 4 buttons. And we actually launched 2 weeks ago, and you know when you've hopefully done something right, after you've done something wrong for many a year, when instead of being able to not flog it to many companies, we've had 10 companies sign up. And because of every owner-manager who has this issue, it works for the T and the expenses if you've got low-income staff. It works in construction if you've got 10 projects that are beginning, middle, and end, and saying, I've got 5 buildings built, what's going on here, what's going on here, what's going on here. And we've been asked actually how do we work with quantity surveyors, and so on, to the fact that everyone can sign off and pass the money down. From actually working in the NHS or third sector, which I have worked in, they're really interested in getting people to and fro and training. In retail, it's about actually training again, the 1 day in the year where you send someone who's off-site to something. That's difficult because everyone's got a different use case. So I sort of don't know what to concentrate on. And if I was going to ask everything, I've got 60 companies that are apparently going through wanting to do R&D. I've done a load of R&D and I need to be told what I got wrong. And that would be really appreciated. So afterwards, I would love to speak to you all. I would leave with one thing that I think everyone, I don't like the word innovation actually. I think that's being used mainly to get the EU funding. I think one of the things that I would like you guys, if you are here and thinking of doing something, think about being clever. One of the things after 10 years of building projects for everyone, is there are 3 things that computers can particularly do. They can store data, database. They can increase communication, your mobile phone or an app. And they can lastly do some maths you can't easily do in your head. And literally every project that I've ever touched has those three attributes. And the difference between successful projects and failure projects is the companies that know that they are the domain holders. They actually have the knowledge. They know what actually goes wrong and what they would like to change. And to take hold of that, articulate it effectively, and make the changes that would change your industry. That's what people now mean by innovation, unfortunately. Most innovation lost people money. I don't know if you look at any of the great innovators, a lot of them ended up bankrupt. Tesla, and so on. Steve Jobs wasn't a great innovator. He was a great marketeer, I think, if you look, but that may be a little bit controversial. But he created great products that have been around for 10 years, using old parts and doing it immaculately well. And you guys are lucky, you have money. So you can go and sit there and take a little bit longer to figure out what's exactly right for you, use that domain knowledge, and then you can test it on your customers. And I think it's a testament here that so many people from around Croydon are actually interested in changing their businesses. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here to listen to Mike or me. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So again, we're not talking about sort of mind-blowing technology. We're talking about an app, 4 buttons, how you manage small amounts of funds in order to make somebody's business work better by allowing that empowering of employees to actually make spending decisions for you, which you can authorize in a different way. And then having all the backup information, knowing how important it is that at the end of the month, you just don't end up with a bucket full of receipts and starting to faff around and, oh, give it to the accountant. So it's about understanding how those markets work and how to make it work on that side. And so, to a large extent, what we're looking at within that context is if we looked at the sort of technology push, that was a what could we do if type question. If the technology could do this, what are all these things that we could do? And then what we're looking at on the other side of that, from the market pull side, is what if we could? What's a problem that actually is facing us that we can solve in a different way, or look at ways in which it's been solved in other industries, in different aspects of life, in different sectors, in different markets. That's the, how could it be applied in the business world that I work in, and how could I apply that and make a business model work from that side? The other thing I think which is quite key, and it's true with both Ian and James, is that the model evolves. Is that you don't actually know what the final customers will be when you start. You actually, it's only by putting it out there and starting to get that market reaction and get people saying, well, can I use it to do this? Or what about that side of it? It then evolves and builds a more robust product, but also takes you into markets and business areas that you perhaps didn't expect. And so it's a whole that way of actually saying, how do you realise the potential of that idea? And that's also where it can get interesting in the sense of there are some things which you can make a slight modification to your own business and apply an innovation in a different way. Other times where you actually have to relearn your business completely, because instead of working in a consultancy or an agency type model, you might be saying, I'm now selling a product. I'm selling a product for 50 quid, which I have to sell to thousands of people, as opposed to selling my time for 500 quid. How does that change? The last thing you want to do, which is what we see with so many companies, is they sell that 50 quid product by spending 2 days doing it, talking to someone. You actually then have to learn about what a product company does and how do you set up your own internal system to actually find customers, get the information to customers so they can validate it, they can do that sell without actually getting the information or coming back to talk to you, and that they purchase it. How do you work that through the system? So all those things are looking at the business aspects of how you run a business and how you run a new business and evolve it to suit the different technologies that you might be working in. So a lot of it is about sort of, let's say, understanding that sales process, understanding the market process, understanding the market within that, and then looking at the delivery model. All of those aspects will involve technology. these days. So if you're looking at the sales process, it might be by delivering product over the internet, or it might be using drones to deliver it, or whatever, and those sort of things. In terms of market, you might be looking far more at social media, looking at ways in which you're doing the direct marketing via different sort of apps or sort of developments on that side in terms of how you gain access to provide information through to your customers. And the delivery, again, can be through direct delivery via apps or a different way in which you interact with the product. So all those things come into it, and actually what you have to do around, once you've looked at what if I could, and you may find a technology or technical solution to provide that basis of innovation, is then to look at the overall business review as to how would that work within that market, how would that work within that sort of sector, and how do people buy things in it? I mean, that sounds like a really silly question, but if you talk about, I know a company we worked with years ago that was signed with us was a sort of a cardiac surgeon and a medical researcher, but both their wives were pregnant, and this is 15 years ago now, and they said we want to store the stem cells for our children. We want to take the umbilical cord blood and we want to store that so that if our children in some future time were to have leukemia or some other disease like that, then they potentially have a cure. At the moment, there wasn't really any particular ways of using stem cells 15 years ago. There is now, and that's what they were looking ahead to do, and actually storing that individual thing. Now, there was a whole complicated set of things of saying, how do you establish a business that can take in cord blood from umbilical cords when someone is giving birth? Certain operational issues of saying someone has to phone up, say, I'm about to give birth, can someone take this cord blood from my umbilical cord, please? So you had to then find ways of working with midwives, working with centres where they're sort of birthing centres and that type of thing. But how do you get the blood to the place? How do you, within an office complex, deal with those bloods coming in? How do you do cryogenic sort? All those things, the Innovation Centre sorted most of that out in terms of creating a cryogenic lab and doing that. All that was a technical issue in how you do it, how you work with that. But who are you selling to? That was a key issue on that side. How do you sell this product? And you had some companies that were starting to do things in this area, and some were trying to sell it by basically just lying to people. So they would say, if you take your new baby's umbilical cord blood, it can solve your brother's bad back. Absolute bullshit. So people are just out there selling it in that way. Or they do it by sort of threatening you in a sense, of saying, if you don't do this, your child may die. A nice friendly way of doing it. That's none of those things actually work in terms, especially coming from the medical profession. So it was all about actually how to engage with that audience and how to find ways in which you could give your audience the medical information that gave them the confidence about what you were doing, and then true medical information about how the stem cells could be used both now and in the future. And in fact, one of the biggest models that came from that was actually how to sell to grandparents or potential grandparents in that sense, as to how they could offer a service or a product for their new grandchildren that they felt was something that would be of benefit to them potentially in the future. And that was actually one of the biggest sales they did. But it was also, how do you sell to midwives? How do you sell to obstetricians in that sort of sense? So it's trying to reimagine the whole business based around a new type of technology or a new way of delivering it. And so that can also come into it as to, is it about sort of spinning off a business? Is it about licensing it? Is it about doing patents and intellectual property? Is it about setting your own R&D? All these things become complex because they're not something you may naturally be doing within your business. And so that, again, is one of the sort of very positive reasons for sort of having an environment like this, because actually it requires different set of skills, knowledge and advice around what your lawyers and solicitors can offer you, what your accountants can offer you, what your banks and finances can offer you in order to enable those ideas to come together. So first of all, it's about being creative in terms of looking at solving problems. It then might be about the development and how you actually pull together resources to create the idea. It might be about protection, it might be about financing, and it might be about actually launching that product and how you do that. And And there's all those things can bring in different elements of knowledge and expertise, which people are around to try and fill those gaps and help you to do that. It's just about taking that first stage, first sort of path, or steps along that path in terms of doing. So that's what the innovation centres do. That's what the sort of professional firms that are represented here do as well on that side. And so that's why we sort of brought it together. That's part of the reason why we've set up in Croydon to look for opportunities, look for types of businesses from that side. But sometimes the ideas are just bad. So I remember once a chap came in to see me, and he said he developed a whole new idea called a car carpet. So what this was, he said it's absolutely ridiculous. When you go to a car park, is you're then having to sort of find the parking space and park your car somewhere and do some of the keys. He had this whole idea that if you could drive up, and then this sort of platform would arrive, and something, Harry explained, would pick up your car, put it on the car carpet, car platform, take your car away, and park it for you. And that was it. You didn't have to do anything else. When you came back later on, you just sort of put in your registration number or pay your parking fee, whatever, and this car carpet would bring your car back to you. So I'll be sitting there at the table and he's sort of showing it all out. He sort of said, so it's all about how the car carpet would come up, and then you put the car on the carpet, and then take it away. And two things happen in that situation. One is that you try to believe them and do your technical due diligence later. Secondly, I tend to also be certain things saying, what you mean like this one? Because the Germans are already doing various things in terms of platforms. That's like, oh no, it's not like, because the key thing about this was you have a car carpet, and the car gets onto the car carpet and is taken away. You go, well, why don't you just put the carpet down so the car drives? No, it's absolutely imperative that the car is lifted onto the carpet and taken away. And he used to say, well, how is the carpet, what's the propulsion, what's taken out? It's quite a weight. Oh, well, sort it out later. And then he said, I took some early advice, and I've made a video. And the videos are brilliant at actually just really bringing these ideas to life and really showing you what is feasible. I said, great, show me the video. So he pulled out his laptop and said, here's the video. And he said, so he laid it all out, there's buildings there represented by cardboard boxes. He had a model car, and he had a bit of wood, the car carpet. So that's the car carpet. This is the car, and you bring it, and the car comes up, and he says, and then what happens? A big hand comes in on the video, picks up the car, puts it on the carpet, and takes it away. And you go, don't think this is going to work, this one. So that one didn't work, but it's got quite a laugh to it. And that's what you have to sort of do, is look at people, first of all, their capacity. There's actually nothing wrong with the idea, and people have done it. It's just that that particular inventor didn't have any idea of actually how to actually bring the technology to market, and just thought because he had the idea himself that was valuable in itself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some sort of questions and answers. If I can ask Ian and James to join me back up here in our this is our boys' own chairs. So we all start on one level, then when we change key, we step up and walk off into the future. So, any questions about innovations? Oh, we'd like to use the word innovation just for today. Any questions?
I'll ask a question.
Good.
When you see these people who've got this idea, how to pull through the concept that you're kind of seeing, or does it matter?
It's so variable. Some brilliant ideas are just very simple, and other ones people have sort of been thinking about for years. It doesn't make them any better. And so that we work from things from basic concepts. So people come to see me to say, I've got this idea, and that might just be a 5-10 minute conversation. What we don't look at is requiring people to have business plans and all that type of thing, because often that's where they need the help. It's actually putting together the understanding of the model to make that right. So people using very little information to do 5-year projections and sort of balance sheets is a complete waste of time. We don't actually have done the research. So clearly, it is easier to work with people that have thought more of it through.
How does that work?
It's funny because a lot of things which have been said around incubators, as they're often called, or accelerators, seem to be very fixed term type systems. So it's a 3-month process or 1-year process. So we tend to have to be quite pragmatic in the sense that some projects take a long time, some very quick. If you're developing an app and you have the skills to do the app, potentially you can do it to a sort of minimum viable product within 3 months and then show it to the market. If you're doing a new drug discovery and you're going to clinical trials, it will take 10 years. So our sort of rule of thumb is we will know pretty well within the first year whether the idea is actually going to take off, and also whether the person has the ambition and the application themselves to take it on. What we do beyond that is that we try and get people to a sustainable income in terms of revenue, so we might be getting it to a few £100,000 so they can live off it, and then look at their potential to scale, and that might be a second stage which will then take longer. So it can be anything from 3 to 5 years.
Mike, can I ask a question just around funding and accessibility to provide funding? So some of our customers come to us, and if it's not everything's bank fundable, and do you guys have access to, call them angel investors for sake of a better argument, or people that were looking to invest in various things?
We do, and I think it's very much around whether companies are ready for investment rather than just having investors. So we have both sides. What we found with a lot of what we do is actually helping companies get to that stage where they are become investable by introducing them to customers and helping to build that management team. So yes, we have a sort of panel of investors that get involved in some new projects. We have access to various sort of grant funds. There are also very good sort of research and development funds which are provided through Innovate UK. There's things like research and development tax credits, which the accountants can help you with on that side in terms of how that can work in those areas. So funding these types of projects is always a sort of, in our mind, is a sort of mixed economy in a sense of saying how do you use the right funds at the right time, and how do you get that leverage right between what might be debt funding, what might be the founder's own funds, what might be investors that need to be brought in, and what is the right time to bring that investment in, because if you bring it in too early, then it's very difficult. You can spend half your time just running around trying to sell investment in a company which is uninvestable, whereas if you progress it further, then you're improving the market, improving the product. But it might also be worth saying how you guys both sort of funded your own.
Nothing sucks. Sorry, it's really, really hard. In my experience, the best thing you can do is try and make sales as quickly as possible. More sales, the more fundable you are. I mean, it's that simple. Friends, fools, and families. I took a Vima. January won a national award from the government for 100 grand. That helped for the design award. But yeah, putting your stall out there and asking and speaking to everyone. I think one of the things with technology that people underestimate is knocking on doors. So I'll give you an example. I did like Thursday. Thursday I was up at 7 o'clock. Had 2 breakfast meetings. Ended up coming up here of all the places. Mike does some mentoring for me, and I have to stop the conversation because one of my clients wanted to speak to me and gave me some work. Then I was down at Kia, the Kiwi Association, invited me to meet Zero. Now, for an expense management company, Zero is a big deal. I've got a credit card firm, I've got receipts, and they are one of the biggest companies. So I met the EMEA. That got back about 12 o'clock, and I got up at 5, and I was speaking to the BNI, that wonderful association of classic networking that is 80s and one of the things that you do. And then once you've got past, I think this is one of the biggest differences actually between what you invited me today. You are £1 to £10 million turnover or more. You can miss a month. And I think one of the biggest ones that we don't give people is the small little break that allows them to get past the next month, improve their business model. And someone just helping out people.
Yeah, I mean, we have been self-funded for the most part, but definitely had those moments where you're waking up in the middle of the night thinking, am I going to afford wages this year? And often that's classic cash flow issues with large organisations, and it's never usually that they're not going to pay for this. It's the fact that just bureaucracy or getting a PO. Because I mentioned when we do SaaS, so software as a service, yearly in advance, that has all sorts of challenges. So you can't do invoice funding, for example, when paying in advance. You'll get a PO. We'll have a 3-year contract with an authority. They'll have a PO for each year, or we'll give you the PO for the first 3 years, and then when it rolls into next year, suddenly nobody knows where to get that PO from. So you're fighting for months to get paid for that. So that sort of stuff can be painful. We're taking on investment now. We're taking that equity investment now. Not that that we could survive as it is, and continue to grow without doing that. But that's to accelerate the growth, and that's what we're those new roles. But yeah, it's funny when people think about investment rounds and they see all the stuff I'm telling you, they see Silicon Valley is nothing like that in this country, and people talk about those sorts of, and you see these figures in the paper about ridiculous amounts of money that Apple pockets are being poured for in Silicon Valley. I always think Silicon Valley is just like a balloon, and there's so much money we're just squeezing it in different places, and it's just moving from one point to another. We don't get any. I've never seen any of that like that, and any initiatives that we see from government typically aren't applicable to us either. So I often think here, it's like that. We're sweating it away, thinking. We're trying to make this survive, and there's a lot of talk going on that doesn't really apply.
I mean, there's SEIS and EIS funding, and there's massive tax breaks. And some people want to put money into the pot, and you'll sit there. And the most hilarious things when you asked is if you are IBM, what your 3-year cash protections are. It's just wrong. It's a punt. If you can't make a decision in half an hour, you're never going to make a decision because it's a year old. There's an idea, there's some technology, there's a lot of effort in the story. So what's the future compared to somebody? I've sat in rooms where someone said, so what happens if a big company like Expensify comes over and does the same thing you're doing? You're going like, well, if that happened, actually, this cost me 60 grand to run, and that cost them 20 million. Still got a shot.
A lot of people like to think that you want to be inventors.
Yeah.
So you get those sort of questions. Well, Dragon's Den. People are looking for any really, not a really insightful question.
It's one of those ones where just basically someone likes it and goes, yeah. I mean, one of the best. So 10 grand that someone gave me January was for someone who worked for 9 years. A guy called Tony Shearer, and he was the chairman of Grafton Health, and he was basically like, "What are you doing?" So I've got investment. He's like, "Right, there's 10 grand." Other people want to go through spreadsheets. I've spoken to stockbrokers. I spent 2 days doing stress analysis on my numbers and came back with the conclusion that they don't want to invest when they knew they didn't want to invest, but they make us be something they did.
To get the flip side, I mean, my bank has been helpful and understanding in dealing to a certain degree within their limits, but it's constrained by very strict controls, which you have to sort of match. It's about we take risks. It's natural for us to take risks. So if I'm 70% sure on something, I do it, and that's completely opposite to people who might not well.
I think the simplest way to solve most of the problems is to sell something, do something you get paid for.
Yeah.
One of the I think the most soul-destroying things I see is people that have been sent out to go do investment presentations around when they're not investable, and so where they haven't actually got the information or the knowledge or the experience or the market analysis or the credibility to get investment, but they think that's the only way they can take it forward. So they keep going around to different business angel events who will take their money to charge them 400 or 500 quid to pitch, and then just never get that investment. And so often that time can be better spent in terms of actually understanding what a customer needs and how to work it on that side, and finding other ways of putting together the funding in order to do it. Some projects are investable. We had a fascinating sort of story about a guy that came up with this idea that he'd lost a friend in a motorbike accident that had sort of come off his bike, head injury, and so he developed this idea of putting effectively it's a sort of an endothermic chemicals in the helmet, so that if you came off your bike and you sort of had this sort of impact on the helmet, so these chemicals would merge together and it would gradually reduce the temperature and make a fridge of the helmet, and that by cooling the helmet in that way, then that would help to stop the brain swelling, which is then what often causes the head injuries. And so, brilliant idea with the helmet, sorts of reasons why it hasn't come off just yet. People always get in the way. But what this guy did, and it's completely illegal, and it took us quite a while to sort out the FCA and the FSE type sort of regulations around it. But what he did was he was on the local radio station, and he told people about this idea, about how he could stop people dying in motorbike accidents, and the various sort of stats behind it. And he said he needed sort of £500,000 to develop it. He got that £500,000 in about half an hour of men going through the change, their wives saying, I'll put in some money to buy a helmet because he's just bought a Harley Davidson. And that's how he raised £500,000. Now, that doesn't happen very often. But if you can make the message compelling and people can understand as a future customer, which is why crowdfunding has sort of opened the way in so many of these markets. Most of it is rubbish in many senses, the way it's worked. But if you can get the right product with the right message, so people understand that they want that product to be in the market because they can see the benefit of it, then it can really work on that side and you can raise a lot of money in those areas. There's all sorts of ways of raising money now. It's actually about being sensible, understanding the different elements of it, talking to the bank, talking to the accountant, talking to the lawyers, so you understand and give a credible picture of what your business will become, and then what's required to take it to that point.
I think one of the ones that I've seen a couple of times recently that's very underestimated is actually large companies invest in you, like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, whatever industry related, has been a surprising amount of investment, especially in the medical area, which I wasn't expecting. So when you're doing large scale projects, I've seen 2 or 3 in my network where that's become an option itself that I don't think in discussions around the table. Crowdfunding's become a big thing, institutional investors, but especially if you're doing something for an industry, and the industry gets it, sometimes the easiest way to get the money is when you're solving the industry's problem. And if that means that I need an extra X amount to make that happen, because they can see the value for their industry, that money happens really quickly as well.
Okay, another question.
Can I just ask, when you're talking about the lower level of investment, that's tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands, you're sort of suggesting you're asking people to take a little bit of a punt on it because they like the idea, they like the person putting that idea out there, which is fine, because, you know, it's a constructive ways forward. But what level of engagement do you think you give back to that investor? Which I'm not going to give them the usual sort of investment analysis type information to track, but they're going to want to know what's going on with their money and how you're doing.
So I was being a little bit blasé. I'm not talking about not doing the work nor doing projections or whatever else. I did mean really that you should be able to read through a prospectus in half an hour, understand it well enough if you are educated in the business world, which is the only way that you're allowed to invest in SAIS, and say a yes or no answer. I'm not talking about, oh look, here's an idea, please buy from me. That's not what I was getting at.
Yeah, I think that's fair if you're going down the EIS type investment, you have to.
So EIS and CDIS are particular tax sort of facilities which allow people to invest to actually offset quite a lot of that investment against other taxes that they're paying, and if the investment goes pear-shaped, then they can actually get further tax benefits back. So it's a way of protecting investors at that stage. So
I think if
I was thinking a more embryonic situation where you're sort of backing somebody as a gun deal. What if that's you? What would you be offering back?
Well, we never
By
went
way of
that.
engagement.
I mean, to answer, I think you've got a fantastic question about two sides. One is about how much engagement do people want and whether you're appropriate. So you're really talking about the advisory side of things, or do you want to be involved to help move someone along? And then the second answer is, what do I get for my cash? The simple answer to the second one is, it's whatever price two parties come along, right? Whether a group at a point of investment has decided that it's value for whatever reason. Companies are worth £1 or 100 billion depending on who's buying it. There's one thing that we don't say often enough. It's completely variable. The other side is what you want out of it and what the other person. Quite a few people want to be engaged, want to pass on the knowledge, want to be involved, and that's almost like a dating and matching session of, is it appropriate? Can you stand each other? And also one thing that I've learned is to really set aside, just as if you're doing charity work, how much time you're willing to give them and what the other side is expecting. The biggest mistakes I've seen with people is when one side expects too much versus the other. And I've done that with people I've mentored, and it's one of my biggest regrets, where you're saying, I can give this amount of time to do this, but I am not running your company for you. I am not doing this. What I want to do is for you to do the following. The flip side of investment is you can lose all your money. That's the whole reason why it's called investment. And you can lose your money in many ways. You can lose it on the roulette table, you can lose it in small companies, and you can lose it in the stock exchange and the bank. It's a question of how much risk you want to take. The flip side is getting in somewhere small tends to go from £1 to £16 to £128 to big IPO and anything in between.
I think most of the investors that we work with are either doing it because they know the market, and so they understand the industry, can provide contacts, and can provide a certain amount of experience and knowledge within it. And the other thing they're usually doing it is for fun, if I'm honest, is they want to buy into somebody else's enthusiasm, somebody else taking that journey from the beginning, and to be part of that and to back people. So people like to back people trying to do something different. And to be honest, the amount of enthusiasm we've seen coming into Croydon in terms of people not only wanting to start businesses, but people wanting to back businesses and to get behind the community. So let's get people in Croydon actually taking the ideas forward themselves. It's great. And so people often do it for local reasons, that sort of thing. It's not going to be what they base their pension on. In many cases, if it comes off well, brilliant. But there are different types of investment. One of the critical things of CDIS and EIS is the problem is the company has to fail for you to get those tax advantages. So a company that didn't quite make it is actually making quite a nice living for themselves. It's a complete waste of time for investors because they don't actually get any return on their investment. So it's managing the expectations on that side.
Just mentioned crowdfunding. So we took some loan funding circle earlier on, and of course that is lots of people just put small amounts in and not involved in the business at all. Although you wouldn't believe it in the comments that they post on the sites. And what was interesting, that's obviously they've got a fixed return that they're going to get as part of that agreement, and you just pay it back as if it's a loan. Second time, when it was finished, they offered us another one. Suddenly, more money, but much higher interest rate, and very quick. And when we looked at it, it wasn't even going onto the public platform. They were giving it out to some other investment, which I thought was sort of strange. We decided against taking that. So we've done investment like that with self-funding in the bank. And obviously this current one, which is much larger than that, is much more involved, and they will sit with this on the board meetings, be involved in
One other, I think, interesting thing that often happens is that how people back one of their own staff to take ideas forward. And I don't think you see that enough. It's people that already know their staff, know how they can support them, can provide a certain amount of other benefits to them in taking it forward. But they often see them as the new energy within their business of taking an idea and driving it forward. And it doesn't necessarily affect the parent company staff. And something we do actually within the university is to say, actually, the academic, at the end of his sort of research life, drive isn't really going to drive this. How do we get one of his students to actually be the driver to take the idea forward and take on that way? That could be a good way of doing things.
Just conscious of time, Mike, if that's all right.
Yes,
so we'll move on, if that's all right. I'll stop if my car can't take you. It was a good one. There you go. Never mind. I just want to really say thanks to the guys, and I think there's two key themes that come out for me from the work we've done with Success Innovations. It's about having an idea, talking to people about it, and that's the core of everything that we do in business and working together, etc. So again, just thanks. There's some talking about it. There's some lunch next door, so please hang about, get some lunch and talk to each other about your businesses. Good starting point, I would suggest. And I think the guys will be around if you want to pick up individually with anybody. So again, look, thanks to everybody for coming. And again, thanks to our co-sponsors, because we're trying to put these on as regular as we can. And again, thanks to Mike and the team.
Just to say, thank you all for coming. The food you may think you recognise, but there's a lot of hidden innovation in there. I'm just not going to tell you what it is.
What is it for you?
There is a lot of food.
Seminar so I've just got a break. So right.
Yeah, exactly.
Different models.